네,
Hello, everyone.
안녕하십니까?
I've heard that you're doing your ministry, and I've heard that you're doing hard work. Today,
오늘은 제가 예수님이
I am going to explain or tell you about what Jesus did 2,000 years ago.
성경에
So among what he prophesied in Bible, I will share that today. I myself am Man Hee Lee from Shincheonji Church of Jesus.
그리고 오늘
And what I'm going to share today is about Matthew 24, Matthew chapter 24. And Matthew chapter 23 is about what happened 2,000 years ago at the time of first coming of Jesus. I'm sure you've read this many times, and I'm sure you really understand about this content well. But the reason why I'm telling you, I'm speaking about Matthew 24 today is because what you've understood so far about 24 and what I understand, what I tell you today, there must be a difference, and you have to understand, you have to know what is different. I am not coming from a religious background. I used to just do farming in the countryside. I haven't really went to churches. I wasn't evangelized by anyone. So that is why I'm just here to speak of what I have seen and heard. I was fighting at the front line in Korean War. And when I came out from the army military, I went back to the countryside to do farming. But when I was really young, I used to pray with my grandfather. My grandfather used to pray every night with wearing the Korean traditional clothes. He was praying, and I did not understand what was happening, what he was doing, but I was just following what he was doing. And my grandfather said, in heaven there is God, and he blesses everyone, and that's how people live their life really well. So after I came out from the military, I was living in this countryside with my father. I was doing farming there. And at that time, every morning and every night, I was praying to God. I cannot exactly remember how I was praying in those times, or how I was praying, but at that moment, there was this huge light star approached to me. It was approximately 7 meters height, and I was really surprised. I was really amazed, and I ran to my father, and I woke up. He woke up, and I said, "There's a star approaching to me." And he looked at the star and he said, "This star is really huge and it's really bright." And in the old saying, it says, "When there is a great man, when there will be a great man, the star will appear, and it might be the sign that a great man will appear." And then the star was following me for 3 days. And because of the star, I promised to God with my blood that I will walk on this life of, path of life of faith. So it was not like I was evangelized by someone, where I didn't really know anything. I knew nothing. But after that, a lot of things, many things happened. I cannot speak of all things because of the time limit, but today I will share about Matthew 24, the things that I've seen and heard and understood. So please listen to it, and if you find anything that you think is wrong, if there is anything that you think that it's wrong, then tell me, because I do not want to speak of those things. In the old days, just as how Moses and Jesus spoke of the things that they heard and saw, I'm doing the same thing. Jesus, in the old days, to disciples, Jesus answered to questions of disciples regarding what will happen in the future, and that was the contents of Matthew 24. So, like I mentioned before, Matthew 23 is about what happened at that time, 2,000 years ago, but Matthew 24 is about what will happen at the time of the second coming, and these are regarding what will happen at the time of the end. And the disciples of Jesus asked Jesus about Jerusalem when they introduced about Jerusalem to him. And Jesus, what he said was that it will be destroyed and nothing will be left. But then these disciples, they were asking these questions, but Jesus, he said regarding the Jerusalem that it will be destroyed and not one stone will be left on another. And the disciples asked Jesus again. So when Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately and asked him, "Tell us, when will this happen and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" So what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So we have to remember this phrase, the end of the age. What they asked was about what will happen, the signs of the end of the age. And what Jesus replied, the first thing that he said as answer is to watch out that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, claiming I am the Christ, and will deceive many. So many people will come in my name and will deceive you, but do not believe that, do not follow them. So you have to be careful that you will not be deceived. So that was the first answer. And then he continued with, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. So then, Bible in Matthew 24, if Jesus is talking about, when Jesus is talking about how the Jerusalem temple will be destroyed, and when and disciples asked him when will this happen, and Jesus answered, at that time nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. That's what he said. So people are not helping each other, but they will be handed over to persecuted and put to death, and they will hand over each other to death. And also in Matthew 10, and parents and children, they will put one another to death. They will betray one another and put one another to death. And that's what will happen.
그래서
So likewise,
그래서 해서 무슨 일이 있었는가? 불법이
So,
성해졌다는 것이죠.
what is happening
선행이
is
성해지는
that
게 아니라
the wickedness increased. It's not the goodness, but it's the wickedness that
우리가
is increasing.
이
And what we have to think
하나님의
here is about
지구촌의 가장 유력한
the Jerusalem, that it is a temple of God.
예루살렘이
This is the only temple of God on this earth.
돌 하나 없이 다 무너진다는
And this Jerusalem is destroyed. Not one stone is left on another because of this war between a nation and a nation. And that is why it's said as the end of the age. So this temple was destroyed because of this war, and that time is the time of the end. And that is why, as believers, we truly want to understand about this verse. And Jesus said, all these things that I'm speaking to you, this is the gospel of the kingdom of heaven, which is the gospel or the words of about the kingdom of heaven. And it says, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So what disciples asked Jesus was really simple. When will this temple be destroyed, and what will be the sign of your coming and end of the age? So to answer that, Jesus just answered to that question. And Jesus also said, this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So this will be the war, and this will happen. So when we think of it, what Jesus spoke to disciples, and it's been 2,000 years ever since he spoke to them, and for the last 2,000 years, this gospel, Jesus' gospel, it went to all over the world, and everyone knows about Jesus now. And that's how the gospel really traveled around the world. And what does it say also? It says, when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. And he also said, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. And he spoke about this destroyer. So who are these destroyers? Destroyers are the ones who destroyed. And that is why they're called as destroyers. It says the temple is destroyed and not one stone is left on one another, meaning it's destroyed. So the destroyer had a war, right? This nation against nation. And I will tell you one reference from Revelation 13. Revelation 13, there is God's temple, Jerusalem, which is God's temple, but there is this enemy, group of dragon, the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, and this beast came into this temple and fought, had a war, and who won? Beast won this war. So people who belong to God, they betrayed and they received this mark from the beast and they worshipped. They're following the beast. They were defeated by the beast and they now follow and worship the beast. So if you really think about this, if it says the abomination that causes desolation standing in the holy place, meaning the destroyers came into God's temple and they won. So the temple was destroyed and destroyers they destroyed.
멸망시킨 자가
So
그런 것에 섰다는 것은 완전히
the
점령을
destroyer standing in the holy place, meaning the temple is now defeated by this beast and destroyers, and the ones who belong to the temple, now they belong to the beast and destroyers. So that's the sign of the second coming, and that is the event of God's temple falling or the destruction. And it was not destroyed by just any event, but this is a war between religious world. It's not a war between a non-religious world. So we have to understand who are this enemy and who are the destroyers. And if there is anyone who have seen and heard all these events in the location, then that person will know. If this event, when this event happen, there will be a person who will witness everything, and that person will know. So the destroyer destroyed the temple and standing in the holy place, meaning the Jerusalem is destroyed, and the ones who destroyed, they are in the holy place, in God's kingdom. So these things, we have to really understand what really the Bible says. And what is the reason that this Jerusalem was defeated by this destroyer? It is because Jerusalem was corrupted, and those who belong to this God's temple, because they handed over each other to kill, to death, so that they will be put to death. And that's what the Bible says. And that is why the wickedness increased, and Jerusalem became weakened, and they fell. So, all the pastors, I'm sure you understand about this, right? And we understand that this cannot happen in our churches, right? This Jerusalem, God's temple, that it became corrupted, this is something that we should also think about as well. Why did it become corrupted? If they had the truth, if they had the complete truth, then they would not be corrupted. Would they really hand over their congregation to death? So, to our congregation, we have to really train them with the complete truth. Who are gonna train them? You, all of you, leaders, pastors, you all have to do this, and we have to make sure that we do not become corrupted. Should we all be destroyed just as how they were destroyed? Do you think destroyers should be really standing in the holy place? We have to know what is happening, and we have to make sure that these things do not happen. And what it also says, so the destroyers are standing in the holy place, meaning God's temple is destroyed, and it says, who are in Judea, flee to the mountains. So those who are in Jerusalem, they were told to flee to the mountains. All of you pastors here, do you know which mountain is this? It says they have to flee to the mountains of salvation, right? Where God is, or where Jesus is. And that's why it says that they have to flee to those places. I mean, they should not stay in the place of destruction to be destroyed, right? Should they really receive the teachings from the destroyers? No. Then they should flee to the mountain. Which mountain is this? So this is what happened in the old times, at the time of Noah. They had to flee to where? To mountain. And they do farmings in there as well. And who were destroyed at that time? The Adam's generation. Even at that time, they had to flee to the mountain to be saved. And at the time of the Lot, and at time of Lot. Well, it says the time of the end will be like the days of Noah and Lot. Even at that time, God told them to go to the mountains. And the mountain is so far away, and that is why God even said that you should stay in the city before as well. So they were also told to go to the mountain to be saved. So then here in Matthew 24, which mountain is this mountain? When we read what Isaiah told us about this mountain, what did it say about this mountain? It says Zion. Zion is a place, it's also a location. This is a actual name of one location, Zion. But this Zion is also, it also has another meaning regarding a pastor chosen by God. I will call you city and Zion. So a person is also called as Zion, right? And the reference verse is also from Revelation 14. It says, Mount Zion, there are those who are saved. And in Mount Zion, there's God's throne, and Jesus is also standing there. There is a specific location, Mount Zion. Matthew 24, it says you need to flee to the mountains, meaning this mountain is the mountain of salvation. So you can be saved. Right, so Zion is not only just a location, but it's also a person chosen or a pastor chosen by God. Then you have to go there, right? You have to go to the place where the pastor chosen by God is. So that is why it says you need to flee to the mountains. Why? Because it says it will be the same as the time of the Noah and Lot. So those who went to the mountains, they were saved. So likewise, it says that we have to go to the mountain of salvation, and if you don't, you will not be saved. And there's also another word saying that how dreadful it will be on those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Who are these pregnant women and nursing mothers? Yes, people get married and they bear children, they give birth to children, right? They're pregnant women. But these pregnant women and nursing mothers in the Bible, is it really regarding the literally pregnant women and the mothers? We have to think of what Peter said. Apostle Paul said, I am once again in the pain of childbirth. He is physically a man, but how come he said he's in the pain of childbirth? Well, spiritually, because seed is God's words, right? So the one who has God's seed is actually the pregnant woman, is like a pregnant woman. So teaching God's words, giving God's words, it's like giving the milk, breast milk, to raise children. So then these women in reference today, Matthew 24, who are these people? Who are these pregnant women and nursing mothers? They're the pastors of the churches, right? All of you, you are raising children with words. So pregnant women and nursing mothers, they're the pastors. And all of you who are gathered here today, all of you pastors, but about this event that Jerusalem was destroyed, this is actually regarding the pastors in the Jerusalem, in God's temple, who were destroyed. Because they were destroyed by the destroyers, they can no longer speak in the throne.
예, 아까 한 구절을 빙자해서 말씀드렸는데
In Revelation 13,
계시록 거기에
I mentioned this before. It says, no one can sell or buy unless they have the mark. So likewise,
김석의 표를 가지자 왜냐면
no one can teach unless they have the mark of the beast, meaning they can no longer speak
자기들이
the words, no longer teach their congregation, and the destroyers are there. So this is actually what's happening to the pastors of Jerusalem. This is not regarding a war in the world. This is not regarding worldly matters. This is regarding religious war. There is no war in the world fighting over Jerusalem, God's kingdom. So people who are having a war here, they're religious world. This is regarding religious matter. So the pastor who's teaching here, pastor who were teaching in Jerusalem, it is talking about those people. So we have to understand these things from the Bible. We have to understand the true meaning of these words so we can act upon these words and then also believe in these words. We cannot just say, I just believe in all this, everything. When you do not truly understand all this, and when you do not understand and you say you believe in this, that's not right. So when all these things are happening,
이 말씀으로 깨달아서 구원에 할 수 있는 곳으로
we have to go to the place where we can understand all this to be saved.
이 사건은
So after this Jerusalem was established, actually the verse, it says, there will be the great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. So this is like, there was no greater distress than this ever since the beginning. And it continues with, if those days had not been cut short, no one would survive, but for the sake of the elect, those will be shortened. So about this distress, if we look at the Old Testament prophecies, it was actually set for 70 years, the destruction period, but then in the Old Testament times, it was actually 70 years. You can find it in the history. And because if it's like 70 years, and it will be difficult for us to survive with that 70 years, and that is why it is cut short. Revelation 13, the people there, they were like prisoners. They're captured under this destruction period, and here it says these days are shortened to for the sake of the elect, and it was shortened to 3 years and a half. So to take back Jerusalem that was taken away, we have to fight against them. They took away what do not belong to them, right? So we have to take it back from them. So Jesus came back. The fact that God came to Jesus and Jesus came back, it is all because to take back this earth. that was taken away. From whom? From Satan, from this group of Satan, right? We have to fight against them and take it back. In Revelation, even from the very beginning, what's happening is a war. And fighting over this war, the time of God reigning over will come. So, regarding these matters, with all of you pastors, if we can set a day, I will explain all the events from Revelation chapter 1 to 22. I will explain about all things what I have heard and seen. If you would like to listen to it, then I will do it. I will happily, I'll be more than happy to do it. So the heaven chose me and showed me everything, and the reason why for that is so that I will go to the churches and testify about this. But then churches, they're not accepting actually or allowing me to go there and speak of these things. So then if I tell you, pastors, right, from chapter 1 to 22, and after you listen to it, and if you think it is right, then you can just go and teach your congregation. That's what I want to do with all of you. And we're talking about 24, Matthew 24 now. And we've talked until about the period of the destruction that is cut short. And the next is about the deception. And it says, the false Christs and false prophets will appear to deceive even the elect, but do not follow them, do not be alert. And also verse 29, immediately after the distress of those days, what's happening? Well, it says it's a distress. Distress is regarding a war of Jerusalem and another nation. So this is a religious war. This is not regarding the worldly or war in the world. So immediately after this event, meaning a nation will rise against a nation, a war between a nation and nation, or a Jerusalem and the destroyers. At that time, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The star will fall from the sky. So because of this war, the sun and stars, they lose light, they fall from the sky. They fall from belongings of God, but they fall to the earth. They lost their light and they fall from the sky. Then, meaning this is like the end of one age. This age of Jerusalem, that's God's kingdom and God's people. They're the chosen people of God. They're the chosen family of God, and the churches, so-called Orthodox churches. We're not talking about the people in the world, just people out there. That's not right, actually. So it says all these things will happen. And it says nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be these things. And these things must happen. Why? Because the coming of Jesus happens after all these events. So immediately after the distress of those days, the sun and stars fall. So then it's the night, right? It's not the day, because sun, moon, stars, they fell and they lost their lights, and it's a complete darkness, and it's night. And Jerusalem was destroyed. And at that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. And the problem is, this sky, where is the sky? Is it the sky that we're looking up in the air? The blue sky? What sky? Which sky is this? Sky, meaning it's heavenly kingdom. It's God's kingdom. And not only that, Genesis 37, verses 9 to 11, family of Jerusalem, father, mother, and children, they're like the sun, moon, and stars. And where they are in the sky, right? So in this main reference, sun, moon, stars, they are darkened and they fell, meaning people in Jerusalem. It's about the people in Jerusalem, and that's when the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, meaning Jesus comes back for the second time, and he will come with many angels. And he will send his angels to the four ends, and he will harvest. He will do the work of harvest. Does it say the chosen people of Jerusalem, they're saved or they're destroyed? It says even the pastors there, right? They receive destruction. So this first heaven and first earth, Jerusalem, all the pastors and the congregation, they come to an end. And after that, Jesus comes back with angels, and Jesus sends the angel to the four ends and do the work of harvest and gather the elect, gather people. And after he said about this, what did he say? Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. So he's saying, he's proving that everything will be fulfilled as it is. So what we have to understand here is that the first heaven and first earth, God's people, the chosen people of God, along with Jerusalem, they are destroyed and they come to an end. Revelation 13, it also talks about how one age comes to an end. And after that, Jesus comes. And from the four ends, he will gather the people, and who he will gather. This is regarding the second coming of Jesus, right? God sowed his seeds in the time of the first coming, and the fruits, he's gathering the fruits of those seeds. And it's to establish the new kingdom with those people, right? It's a new age, because the first things are now gone. So Jesus is gathering these people, and what he really stressed on is that he really emphasized that heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. And just as how it says in Revelation 21, the new heaven and new earth will be established, newly created. But these heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away, meaning all my words will be fulfilled as it is recorded. And he also talks about the time, but at this time, or regarding this time, no one knows about the day or hour, nor the Son, nor the angels in heaven, but only the Father. So, Father is the only one who knows, and unless the Father, no one knows about the day or the hour. And as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. So they were just having their ordinary lives. And it says, Two men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. So angels, when they go out to the field to harvest,
무슨 일 후에
one will be taken and one will be left. So after the first heaven, first earth, the Jerusalem is destroyed, that's when Jesus comes and gather the people. So one will be taken, one will be left in the field, but then the world still, they just live their lives eating, drinking, marrying and giving in marriage. And at that time,
그때에 하나님의 이제 이 도망간 자들도 있지 않습니까? 그러니 이 천사들의 또
so there once again this division of people who ran away and people were taken from angels. And it says there will be this faithful and wise servant at that time who will give their food at the proper time. And if, but suppose it says that servant is wicked, Jesus will cut him to pieces. But it says the master will put in charge of the servants in his household.
우리는 마태 24장을 볼 때는 예수님이 제자들이
and he will put him in charge of all his possessions. So this is once again regarding what will happen at the time of the end as a sign of the second coming. And Jesus came at the time of the first coming, and that was recorded in Matthew 23. Matthew 23, it says God came to Jesus, and the spirits of heaven came to Jesus and was with him. But the pastors of Jerusalem, they shut the door. They shut the kingdom of heaven in men's faces. But today, this should not happen, right? At the time of the first coming, Jesus was the heaven where God was. And the pastors at that time blocked the way to Jesus. And that should not happen today. Pastors, you should go out and check first. If we're teaching the things that are not from the Bible, or if we're teaching what is from the Bible. So myself here, I'm here to speak to all of you pastors for your understanding. Matthew 23 is what happened 2,000 years ago. So that's not something that I have heard and seen myself, because that happened 2,000 years ago. But Matthew 24, this is it has been fulfilled, and I am the person who has seen and heard all these things. I've seen all these things, and that is why I'm speaking of these things to you. There is no one else. I'm just speaking of the things that I've seen and heard. The revelation that I'm speaking to you, there is no one who told me about these things. There is no one who helped me with all this understanding. I used to just do farming. I did not have any background. But Jesus chose myself, and He showed us everything about Revelation from chapter 1 to 22, and He sent me to churches so I can speak of these things, to testify about these to you. So I'm here and sent to testify about these things, to where? To churches. And so you think the churches will really allow me to speak, or will accept me? Once again, I was not evangelized by anyone. I did not study any theology. But here, I'm just speaking of the things that I've seen and heard. And what I have seen and heard are about the events, all the events of Revelation 1 and 22. I did not add or took away anything about it from it. I'm just speaking of these things as it is, as just exactly as I have seen and heard. So myself here, I'm telling you, all the pastors here, I would really like to tell you all about this revelation. So after you listen to it, you can just go to your churches and just teach them. Teach your congregation in your churches. So Revelation 22:16, Jesus said about this person that he sent me to the churches. I am the messenger sent by Jesus to the churches. I was not anointed by just any other person, but Jesus. Jesus told me, but Jesus is the one who anointed me. And he told me everything. He is the one who showed me of all things that he was fulfilling one by one, each by each. So the things that I've heard and seen, that's what I want to tell all of you pastors. And this is true. So I'm not just talking about just any random story, or once again, I have no background in theology or anything, but I have learned this. I have learned the laws of God, laws of heaven from God. That's true. This is true. So here today, I've met all of you pastors. I just thought that I should at least speak to you in this matter today, and that's why I'm speaking to you today. Matthew 24 is about what Jesus said regarding the Jerusalem, that it will be destroyed and not one stone will be left on one another. And the disciples asked Jesus, when will this happen and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? And to answer those questions, Matthew 24 is really about the answers to the questions. And Jesus, he said, there's so much to tell you still, but I'm telling you this. And in Revelation, there's so much that I need to tell you. So, and it says, Revelation, we should not add or take away anything from it, then we will not be saved. But what about you? Have you or haven't you added or subtracted anything from the Revelation? Or don't you want to know more and understand about Revelation? Revelation is a book of prophecy, and when these are being fulfilled, and the entity, physical entities will appear according to what it is recorded. And I can speak of these things because I am the one who has seen and heard all these things. So, if we are believing, if we are the believers believing in these words, we have to understand these words. In the old days, God told Moses about each and everything to instruct Moses in a specific way. Even to Jesus, God told everything in detail about to Jesus, and Jesus did everything according to what he has seen and heard. Read John 5:17-19. Even Jesus, he was just doing what God told him to do. So likewise, I was just a person who used to just farming in the countryside. I knew nothing. I had no knowledge. But regarding God's words, He showed me, I was shown all these things, and that is how I understand these things. So what I'm telling you now, if you think that this is wrong, you tell me that it's wrong. I've been testifying about these things for the last 38 years, but there was no one, not even one pastor who told me that this is wrong according to the Bible. There was no one. If there is anyone here, then raise your hand. Right? So there's no one. If you think that I'm speaking not according to the Bible, then
왜 그래 말하느냐?
it's right that you say to me that I'm not speaking according to the Bible. Let's say I'm like the enemy of you, the pastors. But even Jesus said, we have to even love the enemy. Jesus said we have to even love our enemy. Do you not pray the Lord's Prayer? What do we say in the Lord's Prayer? Forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. Isn't that how we pray in the Lord's Prayer? So Jesus said we have to forgive our enemies and we have to forgive others. Unless we forgive others, and our sins will not be also forgiven. So we have to even love our enemies and we have to forgive even the sinners. And that's the true love, right? That's being obedient to God's words, isn't it? So I'm asking you, all of you pastors, what is the benefit we get from fighting, each other? So let's not do that. But let's just follow God and let's seek after God and be in God. Let's understand God's words and let's go in the words. We have to be in the words. So I'm asking these to all of you pastors here. What I really want to speak to you is about regarding Revelation from chapter 1 to 22. I can tell you about all the things that I have heard and seen, and because we cannot gather in one place like the old days, we can do it online as well. You can just listen to this in your home. So we should set a date, and from that day, I can tell you everything one by one. And if you skip some of the classes, and you will not be able to follow and catch up. So you should not just miss those classes in between. But once again, I can tell you all the events of Revelation chapter from 1 to 22, even the physical realities. I can tell you about all these things even. Is there anything else that is more clear than this? In Revelation 2 and 3, there are 7 messengers that Jesus who were chosen by Jesus. Have you seen those messengers? Have you seen them? Do you know their names? Do you know their faces? But I know because I have seen them. I know them. And in Revelation 14, or Revelation 13, there is the beast coming out from the beast with a sea from 7 heads and 10 horns. Do you know their names? It's said that they give marks on God's people's foreheads and right hand. Have you seen them? I have seen all these things, and that's what I'm trying to tell you here. And if I tell these things to one of the children, he can even understand. But even if a person studied really hard and has a higher background, but he will not be able to understand if God does not let him. I once again have no backgrounds at all. It's not like I was evangelized by anyone. I was learned from anyone else. So my task, my appointed task, my mission is to testify about all these things to the churches, about what I have seen and heard. In Revelation chapter 10, there is this open scroll. This is not a sealed scroll, but this is the open one, and I have received this scroll, and I have to testify again to many nations, languages, multitudes. But this book is now inside of myself, this person, and that's how I can testify about these things so that people can hear about these things. All of you pastors, about regarding the four gospels, the prophecies and Revelation, the prophecies. If you can understand these things, then you can teach all the pastors, all the world, people in the world. You can deliver this message to the people in the world. This is like another level, right? We're talking about the globe. We're talking about this world. So all of you should understand this first, so that you can also deliver this to the others. So today, I've just only told you about the summary of Matthew 24. I could not go over each verses in detail because of the time limit. But I did tell you about the summary and overview of Matthew 24. And Jerusalem was destroyed, and not one stone is left on another, just as how Jesus said. And the devil is now in control, and with the maddening wine, it's destroying the whole world. It's just all nations, meaning it's the whole world. So we can really understand how great their authority is. And they destroyed, the devil destroyed all the nations with maddening wine. Wine comes from the vine, right? In Isaiah 25, it also talks about the wild vine. So we have to understand about the Bible, and we have to understand that about this event, that God is now beginning the new era after finishing the before age. So today I have just told you about the brief overview of Matthew 24, but I would like to tell you and speak of all chapters of Revelation. So I really hope that God bless all of you. Thank you.
Are you curious about the book of Revelation? Do you have questions about the end of the age? New Heaven, New Earth presents the book of Revelation, a detailed chapter-by-chapter explanation, beginning October 18th.